The last sounds of that vast pit still trembled through the stone beneath my feet. Those low, ceaseless moans that rose from 1,000 mouths buried in the walls, murmuring pain like lullabies. But now, all of it was silenced. It wasn't that the wails had stopped. It was that something greater had arrived. Something so old and so full of power that even torment dared not speak in its presence. And it stood before me. Not a man, never a man. I had thought at first that it was one of the robed figures I had seen before. Those watchers with faces hidden and bodies still. But this one was different. Wrong. Too tall. Too thin. Too alive. The rags it wore clung to it like old skin. They hung in strips, blackened and wet, as though pulled from a fire long extinguished. Beneath the tattered robe, something moved. Not flesh, not sinew, but something deeper. The memory of movement. It had no eyes, no face, only a round yawning maw where a head might be. Its teeth jagged and layered like those of a deep-sea predator. The mouth turned slowly, like a wheel, and from it came not breath but soundlessness. A silence so pure and complete that it smothered thought. And then it moved. It didn't walk, it didn't glide. The space between us simply vanished. A blink and it was closer. Panic found me, not as fear of death, which I had long since left behind, but something older, something more primal. The kind of panic that slithers in through your bones before your mind can catch it. I turned and fled. The stone split beneath my feet. The walls of the pit shuddered with a groan that sounded like a mountain grieving. I heard no footsteps behind me, only the shriek of something impossible, moving in a way the world was never meant to allow. The beast was pursuing me, not to feed, but to drive me. The landscape blurred around me, a kaleidoscope of weeping architecture and clawed ruins. I passed the silent mouths in the walls, their expressions frozen in eternal howl. I passed the fractured altars, still smoldering from fires that had burned out long before I was born. The ground twisted, peeled back and reformed beneath me with every step. This world did not follow rules. It didn't need to. And then, suddenly, the beast halted, as though some invisible line had been crossed. I felt it before I saw it. The change in air pressure, the sharp taste of iron on my tongue, the subtle crack in the firmament that told me I had passed from one realm into another. I turned back only once. The creature stood at the boundary, its limbs twitching in silent fury, unable or unwilling to cross. Its many-toothed mouth opened wide, and from it came no sound, but the air warped with the force of its voiceless scream. And then it retreated, slowly, patiently, back into the fog and flame from which it had come. Its work was done. I had been herded, like cattle, into the last ring of hell. And now there was no way back. The terrain stretched ahead, impossibly vast, gone were the jagged spires and screaming cliffs of the earlier circles. This place was flat, featureless, sterile. A plain carved from obsidian, smooth as glass, littered with the outlines of forgotten architecture, ruins that never had a builder. The sky above was still, not black, not grey, but an absence of sky altogether. A perfect dome of colorless void, pulsing faintly, as though it were watching me breathe. And beneath my feet, the surface was edged with lines. Not words, not symbols, but shapes. Simple at first. Circles, spirals, sharp edges. But as I walked, the shapes became more complex. They twisted in on themselves, intersected, overlapped, forming patterns too intricate to follow. I could feel them in my body. They were not decoration, they were language. A script meant not for the eye, but for the soul. And it was speaking to me, whispering my sins back to me, in a voice that sounded like my own. I kept walking, and gradually I became aware of figures. At first I thought they were statues, still, motionless, carved from pale ash. But they weren't. They were people, or what was left of people, bent double beneath invisible weights, kneeling, burying their faces into the ground. Their flesh had long since hardened, their spines twisted into impossible arcs, their arms fused into shapes of worship or surrender. They did not move, they did not breathe, but somehow I knew they were not dead. They had simply stopped resisting, stopped being. All around me they knelt in circles, in rows, in endless formations, frozen in reverence, their heads bowed toward the same distant point, and I followed their gaze. At the horizon stood a mountain, or no, not a mountain, a shape, a monolith of absence, the idea of a mountain, carved from shadow and gravity, built not upward but inward, like a wound folding into itself. And atop it, a throne, black, enormous, silent. And on that throne sat a figure. I could not see it clearly, not yet, but it was unmoving and vast. From this distance, it seemed made of bone and fire, but also of something else, something unspoken, unknowable. And as I stood at the threshold of this final landscape, I knew what I was seeing. The final circle, the last truth. And he, the devil, was waiting. Not as a tormentor, not as a monster, but as a mirror. I had been summoned, not to be punished, but to understand. Behind me, the air was still. Before me, the mountain rose like a final question. And then, above, where the sky should have been, something blinked. Above me, in the dome of perfect nothing, a single fissure of awareness cracked open. Not a light, not a star, but an eye, immense and lidless, a pupil without shape, gazing down not from the sky but from behind it. And then it was gone. But something had changed. I could feel it. The mountain in the distance, still black and impossibly still, had grown clearer in the space between one heartbeat and the next. I had not moved, yet I stood closer. The plane had shifted, subtle like breath caught in the lungs of some vast sleeping thing. The world had taken one quiet step forward. And so I walked. I did not question my feet. They moved as though remembering a path I had never learned. The surface between them pulsed faintly, its texture less like stone and more like smooth bruised skin. Every step sent a low tremor into the ground, and for a moment I feared that it might feel me. I wasn't alone on the plane. Not anymore. Shapes began to stir among the rows of the kneeling damned. Those statues of flesh I had passed before, bent double in their devotion to the throne on the horizon. Now, some of them twitched. Others raised their heads. They did not speak, but their faces turned toward me, one by one, as though stirred by some ancient wind that had only now begun to blow. And behind their hollow gazes, I saw not hate, not grief, but relief. I think they believed I might deliver them, or join them. But I kept walking. The air changed again, just slightly. It thickened, soared. There was a scent I hadn't noticed before. Not rot, not sulfur, but something more intimate. The odor of breath. Warm, steady, and uncomfortably near, like someone leaning just over your shoulder in the dark. The sky began to close in, not with clouds, there were none, but with weight. I could feel it on my back, the pressure of that endless dome, bearing down inch by inch, compressing space, thought, identity. It was like being slowly buried under the idea of eternity. And then the ground changed. It no longer shimmered with reflections from the blood-lit cracks. Those cracks had vanished, sealed behind me like veins cauterized. The obsidian plane gave way to something else. A carpet of shattered glass and teeth. Thousands of them, human and otherwise, ground to fragments and scattered in patterns that hurt the eye to follow. I walked more carefully now. Each step clicked with delicate menace. The soles of my feet bled, but here that meant nothing. Above, the throne did not move, but the shadows around it did. They curled like smoke, slow and thick, and within them I could see shapes forming. Not fully formed things, but impressions. Ideas of forms that had once been whole. Figures hunched and long, draped in cloth that never touched the wind. Mouths soon shut, faces erased. The same as the ones from before. The robed ones. They were here again, waiting. Not for me, I sensed, but for him. And yet, they watched me ascend. Some stood motionless upon the hills. Others had embedded themselves into the walls of the mountain itself, like fossilized witnesses trapped in prayer. Their presence did not disturb the silence of the plain. They were the stillness. They gave it shape. I passed beneath one perched on a crooked archway. Its hands were clasped together in what might have once been devotion. Its head tilted ever so slightly as I drew near. I did not look into its hood. I didn't need to. It knew me, and I knew that it had always been here. I reached a ridge, a gradual rise in the terrain, the first true elevation since I had entered the first circle. From here, the mountain's size became undeniable. It was not merely vast, it was impossible. Its base stretched across a horizon that defied geometry. Its peak was hidden not by clouds, but by a kind of visual refusal. My eyes rejected it, like a lie told too many times to believe. And still, the throne waited at its summit. I paused. The wind, or what passed for it here, shivered across the plain behind me. Not a sound, but a disturbance, like something enormous shifting far in the distance. I turned, and through the haze, I saw it. Far behind, across the vast distance I had walked, where the glass and teeth path began, something stood. A silhouette. It had not been there before. It didn't move. It was not the beast from before. That thing had been brutal, fast, driven by the hunger to drive me here. This figure was different, still, tall, its shape indiscernible beneath robes so long they bled into the ground, as if it had been grown out of the very floor of hell. It just watched me, or perhaps it simply existed. The concept of watching made flesh. And though there were no sound, no movement, no gesture, I knew it would follow. Not now, not soon, but eventually. Everything in hell moved at the speed of inevitability. I turned back toward the mountain. The final climb awaited. No more altars, no more figures in prayer. Only a path, spiraling upward into the heart of stone. The throne had grown larger now. I could see more of it. Its edges, its armrests, its carvings like veins splitting across its surface. And seated there, unmoving still, the shape of him. He had not turned his head, but I could feel his attention. He was aware of my presence, in the same way that the sea is aware of a drop of blood. And still, he waited. The air was heavier now, thick with something I couldn't name. My body had long since forgotten exhaustion, pain, even fear. Only this strange gravity remained, pulling me toward the stone plateau ahead. And at its center was the throne, silent and unadorned, not carved from opulence or fire, but shaped by time and silence. The world here felt still, but not empty. It was watching. Then he was there. The devil. He didn't appear. He simply was. His form shimmered in and out of focus, never settling into something I could understand. Smoke, shadow, suggestion, a presence more than a being. He didn't speak with sound, but his voice entered me like a cold wind, curling through my thoughts.
You have come, and now you will see.
I tried to speak, but nothing came. What words could I offer to something like this? His form twisted for a moment, shifting into something painfully familiar. My face, my posture, every line of regret carved into my own reflection. Not just the man I had been, but the lie I had become. It looked back at me with hollow eyes, and for a moment I was staring not at the devil, but at myself.
This is not punishment. This is revelation.
Around me, the ground split into fissures, and beneath the stone I saw faces. Countless souls trapped in their own silence. Their eyes did not plead, they judged. I could feel their stories echoing inside me like distant thunder. Every soul was here not because of their crimes, but because of what they had refused to face. And I understood then. This realm was not made of fire and torment, but of truth. The devil did not rule it. He was it. The final unveiling, the collapse of every illusion. He existed only where self-deception had died.
I am not your captor. I am what remains when nothing else is left.
The air trembled. Behind him, the darkness split open, a line of pale light bleeding into the sky. Slowly, it widened, and through it came a new presence, vast, quiet, unknowable. Not salvation, not judgment, something older. It did not speak, it only watched. I stared into it, my heart hollowing as something shifted deep in my chest. The devil turned slightly, not afraid, not reverent, only still, waiting.
The cycle never ends.
He murmured, as if speaking to himself. The rift widened, and then whatever was beyond it saw me.